the Cathedral of Cagliari. Come to discover the unbelievable interiors of the church. The church has a Latin cross plan, with 3 naves, a transept and side chapels. 3 of these chapels open onto each of the 2 side aisles. Other 4 chapels open onto the transept. At the entrance there are placed 2 of the 17th century holy water fonts. On the ceiling of the nave, they are represented the exaltation of the cross, the stories of spreading the faith in Sardinia, and the Pietà by Filippo Figari. On either side of the central portal, there are 2 pulpits derived from a single ambo, commissioned in 1158 and completed in 1162, a work by Master William, executed for the Cathedral of Pisa. During the renovation in 1669, the pulpit was removed and divided. The 2 pulpits were transported in their present position. Before the division, the pulpit was to be supported by 7 pillars, 4 of which were based on the 4 lions, which are now located at the foot of the presbytery. In the right aisle we find the chapels of Santa Cecilia, that of Our Lady of St. Eusebius, and St. Michael. Let's visit them. The Chapel of Santa Cecilia, dedicated to St. Cecilia, the patroness of the cathedral. It is in Baroque Piedmont style. At the center is a painting of the mystical marriage of Santa Cecilia with St. Valerian, by Pietro Angeletti. On the silver tabernacle is represented the Emmaus Dinner, attributed to Lorenzo Lavi, now moved to the Chapel of Our Lady of St. Eusebius. It is also called the Chapel of the Black Madonna, for the presence of a statue of a Black Madonna. The statue, Cedar of Lebanon, 155 centimeters high, is one of 3 copies of the original statue of a Black Madonna which Eusebius, Bishop of Vercelli and Cagliari, brought with him to return from his exile in Palestine, in 362 after Christ, now moved to the Chapel of San Michele. On the marble altar, between 2 pairs of twisted columns, it stands the sculpture of St. Michael driving out the rebellious angels, 18th century work of Joseph Massetti. At the sides there are 2 statues representing St. John the Evangelist and the prophet Isaiah. Let us visit the left aisle, where we find 3 other chapels. The Chapel of the Baptistry, the Chapel of Santa Barbara and the Holy Families, and in the end the Chapel of the Blessed Virgin of Mercy. Here we go. Chapel of the Baptistry. It was built by Domenico Spitorno, who demolished both sides of the tower in order to build the chapel. It was renovated in 1824 by Francesco Cagliari, in the neoclassical style. The deep basin marble, which was used to store the holy water, is the only 17th century original piece. Now we visit the Chapel of Santa Barbara and the Holy Families. It was built at the behest of Bishop Paolo Costanzo Fileti, Viceroy of Sardinia and Archbishop of Cagliari. The chapel shows at its center a painting of Santa Barbara, who refuses to worship pagan idols, attributed to Corrado Giaquinto. Finally we find the Chapel of Our Lady of Mercy. It was built by Bernard of Carignano, Archbishop who belonged to the Order of St. Mary of Mercy. At the center, Madonna and Saints of Mercetoria, painting by Giacomo Altamonte. Under the canvas, the statue of the Virgin of Pilar and the statue of Archbishop Carignano. On the sides, the monument of Don Luis Almada of Sorso Barons, Annunciation Night, and Archbishop Monsignor Paolo Maria Cerci Serra, Primate of Corsica and Sardinia, Grand Officer of the Order of Saints Maurice and Lazarus. Let's move now in the south transept. In this arm we find the chapels of St. Isidore, the chapel called Aragonese of the Blessed Sacrament, and the Chapel of the Madonna del Grazie. On the right wall is the mausoleum of the Archbishop Bernard della Cabra, funeral monument in the Baroque style, reminiscent of Bishop Bernardo della Cabra, Archbishop of Cagliari, the first victims of the plague in 1655. At the back wall, it is located the imposing altar of St. Isidore, erected by the Archbishop and Viceroy of Sardinia Diego Fernandez de Angulo in 1683, to celebrate the canonization of St. Isidore Farmer, whose statue is at the top of the altar. At the center, the painting of the Madonna. The framework is also called Madonna of Sardinian Parliament, because in front of it, in 1632, the Sardinian Parliament swore in the name of the Kingdom of Sardinia, to defend and teach the pure conception of Mary. Under the altar is the monument to Diego Fernandez de Angulo. On the sides are statues of Saint Barbara of Nicomedia, Saint Bonaventure of Bagnoregio, Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Diego de Alcala, Saint Saturnino, the latter, in polychrome wood, carved by Antonio Lanas, in 1759, and two angels. On the left wall, above the door of the sacristy access, is the altarpiece of the Crucifixion, painted between 1528 and 1530, and attributed to Michael or Peter Cavero. The painting includes the Madonna and Child, the Crucifixion of Jesus, the Annunciation, Saint Jerome, Saint Matthew and Saint Bartholomew. Just beyond, it is the Chapel of the Blessed Sacrament, known as the Chapel of the Aragonese or Holy Thorn, built around 1328, the year in which the Aragoneses took possession of the Cagliari Castle. The chapel, with an octagonal plant, is in fact the first Sardinian example of architecture in Gothic Aragonese style. On the capital supporting the pointed arch, and on the key of the vault, there is the coat of arms of the House of Aragon. This chapel is also called the Holy Thorn because there is preserved, in a niche on the right side, a plug came from the crown of Christ. On the altar there's a precious silver shrine, dating back to 1610, by the craftsman Giovanni Mameli. A 17th century silver lantern is also hanging from the ceiling. Come to the next chapel of the Sacred Heart of Mary. Here we find an organ built in 1758 by the Neapolitan Carlo Mancini, coming from the nearby Church of the Purisima. Once on the south transept, please watch the power of Mary and her protection on the Sardinians, and Santa Cecilia, by Filippo Figuri painter. Now move into the north transept. On the right wall of the north transept, there are two chapels, symmetrical to those of the Sacred Heart of Mary and the Holy Thorn. The first, close to the presbytery, is the 18th century Chapel of the Crucifix, entirely covered with veined black marble, which a beautiful 16th or 18th centuries wooden crucifix, and two 17th century statues of Saint Sebastian and San Rocco. The following chapel, designed in the celebrations on weekdays, called Pisan Chapel, with a square plan, with a cross vault, in Tuscan Gothic style, is the oldest chapel of the cathedral. This chapel dates back to the first decades of the 14th century. Under the table there is a fragment of the 13th century pulpit lectern. On the back wall stands the mausoleum of Martin the Younger, an imposing monument to Martin I of Sicily, Infante of Aragon, who died during the conquest of Sardinia in 1409. At the bottom there are four statues of warriors and two angels, who support a shield, the coat of arms of the King of Aragon, and an inscription with the date of his death. Above, between two statues of lions, the urn containing the body of Martin and statue of the King, Death, Justice and Faith. On the left wall there is the monument to Monsignor Ambrogio Machin by Domenico Martini. Above we see the so-called Royal Gallery, a wooden lodge, where the royal family attended Mass, during the period of exile in Cagliari, from 1799 to 1814. On the vault there are paints of Christ the King and San Saturnino, by Filippo Figuri. Now, let's look at the presbytery, where we find the main altar. The presbytery of the cathedral is raised by about 1.5 meters from the church floor, and surrounded by a marble balustrade, embellished with exquisite carvings. At the foot of the balustrade there are four lions, from the mid-12th century, originally located at the base of the columns that supported the pulpit of Master William, when it was still intact. On the right side there is an elegant marble relief-shaped altar, built by Canon Pietro Sanna in 1702, in which it is placed at the top a bas-relief with the image of Saint Cecilia, represented with the palm of martyrdom in her symbol. The organ. At the center of the presbytery is the main altar, a simple marble table supported by 5 columns of the same material. This is the original altar of the Romanesque church, restored in 2007. Behind the altar is the 17th century wooden choir, in center of which stands the bishop's throne, decorated with the coat of arms of Archbishop Pietro Vico. On the back wall is placed in a precious niche, the marble statue of the Virgin of Montserrat, a title that the Aragonese added to all the churches dedicated to the Virgin Mary. In the dome sails, a paint of the four evangelists, still by Filippo Figari, while in the vault there are another picture, The Glory of Street Sicilia, by Antonio Caboni.